Ehud Olmert is the former Prime Minister of Israel who served from 2006 to 2009. He joins us now live from Tel Aviv. Good to have you with us, sir. So first of all, I just read out the statement there, strongly worded statement, over 20 countries. Is Benjamin Netanyahu leading Israel into international isolation?
I don't know. I really hope that it will not be the case. I personally was campaigning and supporting and proposing a two-state solution when I was Prime Minister, and I supported it and campaigned for it throughout since then to these very days. And I think that supporting a two-state solution, as some of these countries are proposing, is definitely the right and possibly only political solution for the historic conflict between us and the Palestinians. I just don't think that it should be presented in the context of a punishment, not a punishment for us, not a punishment for the Palestinians. This is a basis for which we have to aspire, all of us. And I hope that the Israeli government will come along also.
Do you honestly, in your heart, sir, believe that Benjamin Netanyahu wants to set up a two-state?
No, I don't have to believe. He says time and again that he is not in favor of it. But as you know, I'm not a supporter of Netanyahu. I'm in a very strong opposition to Netanyahu, and I'm part of the efforts which is made by many in Israel to change the Israeli government, which I hope will take place, and I hope that it will be a good turning point towards also the beginning of negotiations between us and the Palestinians. By the way, while we have all these expectations and demands from the Israeli government, I think that the Palestinians also ought to get ready to deal with these issues. And I think there is a universal understanding that the Palestinian Authority has to be reformed and re-elected in order to be able to cope with all the challenges involved in moving forward towards a political solution.
All right, that does seem quite a way away when we look at what's happening on the ground right now, right? I'm wondering, what's your take on the Israeli cabinet's plan that's been announced to take over Gaza City? Is that just a way to keep the war burning?
I don't know what they have in mind. I can say what appears to be the only possible interpretation. And the only possible interpretation is that it definitely keeps the war going indefinitely, because we are trying to understand what may be the goal or the objective of this military operation. We are not sure that we can understand it. And as you know, all the former chief of staff of the Israeli army and the senior generals and the commanders of Mossad and of the Secret Service, they are all having the same opinion that this war should end now, that there is not any objective for a military operation, which was the cost. And the cost may be Israeli soldiers, the hostages, and also many Palestinians in Gaza, which we definitely don't want and don't need to kill.
Do you think it benefits Netanyahu to keep this war going? I mean, there was a ceasefire deal in place between January 19th, which was seeing the release of Israeli captives and ending the fighting, which the Israeli government violated on March 18th and resumed shelling.
Well, I don't know that it will give him any advantage, but it's likely that he thinks that it will give him any advantage, which I'm not certain about, of course.
So I got to ask you, as you know, you were a senior figure, obviously, in the Israeli body politic, the Israeli prime minister, in fact. We're at a stage now where there is a long list of international figures and institutions who say Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. Do you think it's time to recognize that?
No, I quite frankly, look, I've been criticizing the Israeli government, and I didn't hesitate to accuse the events that are taking place in Gaza sometimes as war crimes. There is not a genocide. There is not a policy of genocide. There is not even a policy of war crimes. There are war crimes committed, okay? But this is not definitely not a declared policy. This is not something that one can identify any particular order or command that was given by the army or by the government to kill indiscriminately people. Things happen because the war keeps going.
Sorry, sir, but we heard from the Israeli minister.
Not a policy of genocide.
Right, but we did hear from Israeli officials like the Israeli Minister of Defense talking about cutting food, fuel, water to Gaza, something the UN Special Rapporteur on the right to food said on July the 17th. He labeled it as Israel having announced its starvation campaign against Gaza and made its intentions to starve everyone in Gaza explicit. Is he wrong?
No, let's be accurate, okay? It's very easy to fall in line with the rhetoric and the exaggerations, which are spread.
You're not suggesting this international expert with a legal background is exaggerating, right?
Excuse me. Let me present my point of view, okay? I think that there are some ministers, not the Minister of Defense, I believe, but there are ministers, Minister of National Defense, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, which talked about denying the humanitarian needs in Gaza and actually forcing a deportation of Gazans into the south part, which definitely is totally unacceptable and which is a crime. But this has not been accomplished. This has not been perpetrated. This is not presently the policy of the government. The fact is that the government did make exceptional efforts in the last few days to increase the supplies of humanitarian needs. Israel directly and also with the assistance of some other countries that were dropping from the skies the boxes of food and so on. Again, I'm not trying to excuse, nor do I try to defend what I think was a negligence, reckless, irresponsible, and unforgivable denial of humanitarian needs for a long period of time. And this is entirely incumbent upon Israel to provide these humanitarian needs, although, of course, Hamas is trying to disrupt this process in any possible manner because of their own interest that they don't care about the Palestinians living in Gaza. We all know. But at the end of the day, we are in commander, so we have to find the ways to provide the humanitarian needs and to make sure that no one will starve for death. No one, no a child, not a grown-up, not anyone in Gaza, and that we have to make sure that it is done appropriately, effectively, and comprehensively.
So Human Rights Watch, amongst many other internationally accredited institutions, are wrong when they referred in December the 18th to a policy, not negligence, a policy of spurred on by and endorsed by high-ranking Israeli officials and reflecting an intent to starve civilians as a method of warfare. They're talking about an intentional policy rather than just a negligence. Surely you're not telling viewers, with all the images we're seeing, that this is simply some negligence rather than what credible institutions call a policy.
You can bring in more quotations from more organizations. I'm not familiar with this. As I said again, I do not defend what can't be defended, but I would not join those who say that there was purposely a policy of starvation. There was not a policy of starvation. There was ministers in the cabinet. We all know who they are, that were talking about that demanded that, even threatened to leave the government and bring down the government if humanitarian needs will be supplied. But it didn't become the policy of the government. However, there were negligences. There were many failures. And as a result, many people may have lost their lives for no good reason. And this is something that can't be excused and can't be defended and can't be forgiven. But this is presently, I believe, not the policy of the government. This government is a very bad government for Israel, and we are making every possible effort to get rid of it. But we have to put things in the right context.
which I think all these organizations, from the UN to international human rights organizations, including some of them Israeli organizations like B'Tselem, which did issue a report saying there was genocide in Gaza and a policy of apartheid, then they're not putting things in the right context as well?
Now, as I said, you can keep on bringing more and more quotations. I'm not in a position to argue about things which I didn't read and evidence that I haven't examined. I can say this. There were many people that lost their life. There were many people that suffered from inadequate supply of humanitarian needs. And in all these cases, at the end of the day, it was the responsibility of the Israeli government to accomplish it.
Right.
I don't agree that there is a policy. There is negligence. There is indifference sometimes. There are failures. There are ministers in the cabinet which talk about it, but it had not become the policy of the state of Israel. There are many mistakes committed by us, enough, even without exaggerating it.
All right, we'll leave it there for the viewers to decide. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Ehud Olmert, former Israeli Prime Minister.
All right.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.